Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Andy. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Brian?
Can't complain, my friend. Crypto is holding up pretty well despite the chaos. So, I think there are far more unhappy investors out there than the crypto community.
That is true. That is true. Hey,
Yeah.
so just wanted to shout out and say a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. This is Andrew, and I have here with me Brian from Santaman. He's the head of content. And today, where we are, it's Thursday, April 17th, 2024. And it's kind of mid month, and markets have been crazy, haven't they, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, compared to the beginning of the month, things have calmed down a bit, but we
Yep.
still have a ways to go before people feel comfortable and uh, feel like the global economic conditions aren't standing in the way of things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, businesses are holding back on making decisions, doing purchases, or spending any money because there's uncertainty in what the rules are. So, or what the or what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, if I go to bed tonight and I wake up tomorrow, I've got a new set of rules, a new set of something's changed overnight, and so for businesses to operate, they need certainty of rules, and so they know what's happening. So it's interesting times, very interesting times. um, but as you mentioned, it seems like the crypto market is holding steady, and relative to capital markets, and the stocks, it hasn't it hasn't crashed as hard. Although alts have been hurt pretty bad from the peak. But yeah, let's dive into it and see what's happening.
Yeah, I'll present my screen here. One thing I was checking out shortly before this call was the holdings of the World Liberty Financial Wallet. This is, of course, the one associated with Donald Trump and his family. A lot of people understandably are speculating whether there could be some under the radar plans to either pump crypto or tank crypto or something in between with all these tariff talks. So
Yep.
I checked out the public address here for
Hmm.
the wallet that holds all of the different coins. There are a total of about 50 different tokens that the wallet's currently holding. Um, the top three, which make up roughly 66%, right around two-thirds of all coins, would be USDC, which is a stable coin, Raft Bitcoin, and Ethereum. Uh, and it's notable that the tariff announcement happened here, April 2nd. And the only thing among these top three coins that changed was a big jump in stablecoin holdings. And I found this to be a good sign. In fact, it didn't just jump, it went from a measly $1.19 million worth of USDC to $26.19 million or so, where it is right now. So we're talking about maybe a 19x overnight in terms of USD coin held. That tells me, these conspiracy theories about Trump and the Republicans or the US trying to tank crypto is largely overstated and probably is not a thing.
Hmm. So that's an increase of 25 million overnight, isn't it?
Yeah, give or take just about. So
Yeah.
it's a huge jump in buying power that
Mhm.
tells me um, at the very least it's not coming from crypto. It's not like they traded out a bunch of crypto for USDC. And
Mhm.
what I do see is stability when it comes to their wrapped Bitcoin holdings and Ethereum holdings. In fact, their last moves were around March 4th, where they accumulated a lot more of both. So that is kind of a good sign, in my opinion.
Nice. Well, it's great that we have such visibility.
Yeah, I mean they're holding $77.2 million worth of crypto right now. That's no chump change. I know there's a few other associated addresses that we don't know as much about, but this
Mhm.
is the supposed largest and most prominent, and that's a good sign there. Obviously, the reason I wanted to kick off the call with this is largely markets have been controlled by many of Trump's decisions over the past 2 weeks, ever since the tariff announcement, uh,
Mhm.
April 2nd, 2 weeks from the day of this recording. So, of course, we're going to want to know anything that might reflect his mindset and his decision making.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely interesting. That there are also rumors that I've heard, on social media that, obviously, that it's being manipulated, to pump their bags, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument for that. There certainly was a sizable dump after the news broke. We got Bitcoin down to the 74K range before we gradually recovered back to where we are now. Bitcoin sitting at around 85K as I transfer to another slide here.
Mhm.
Um, we can see that crypto is looking pretty good. And in fact, the discussions have been rising toward layer ones and layer twos across social media, while meme coins are getting less and less attention. That's generally a pretty good sign and a signal of slight fear and not a lot of greed.
Good. That's good. Um, so besides, that, like, what else are we seeing, in the data? Like, what else is it telling us?
Yeah, so we can check out some of the on-chain metrics for Bitcoin. It looks pretty stable right now. Transaction volume is hovering right
Mhm.
around 20 billion, $22 billion worth of transaction volume per day for crypto's top coin. Active addresses, network growth, and circulation are all showing here in orange, purple,
Yeah.
red, respectively. They're all pretty flat. Circulation's a little bit down. That's a little bit concerning. Um,
Hmm.
it does look like there's some stagnancy on the network due to people just not quite knowing what to do. There's such a polarized level of opinions right now where bulls and bears are not fully confident in their hypotheses at the moment, and that's causing people to become a little more on the hodler spectrum than they usually are.
Well, that's interesting because what you just mentioned kind of reflects what businesses are also doing. They're taking a similar stance. They don't really know what to do. Should we buy more inventory and stock more inventory? Should we ship it? Should we sell?
Mhm.
So effectively, what's concerning, on a macro scale is that the velocity of money is slowing down, and therefore it's not flowing through the economy, and that's never a great sign, because people don't know what to do. They don't know what's going to happen next.
Right. And crypto is not intended to be an import or an export. It's not because it's not
Yep.
a tangible good. It's a um, digital good that can be transferred at any time. And in fact, many theorize that crypto stands to benefit from tariff uncertainty due to the fact that uh, countries
It's
can skirt
borderless.
around fees and taxes because of crypto, right? So
Yep. Yep.
we haven't seen those effects yet. There's mostly just been a correlation with the S&P 500. I want to keep this screen for a moment, but I also
Hmm.
want to show the correlation really quick.
Hmm.
So if I just type in SPX, I'll pull up my template. And gold has been the one that's just really taken off here. While crypto and the S&P, if we highlight since the announcement right around there,
Yeah.
pretty tightly correlated. The S&P's obviously been off for the last 4.5 hours, 5.5 hours from the time of this recording, but you can
Hmm.
expect that they'll probably open up going the same direction as Bitcoin because that's been the trend.
Yeah. 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 That's
So
interesting.
that's kind of what a lot of people are waiting for. When's the correlation going to break? When is crypto going to not trade like a high leveraged tech stock? Because that's
Mm,
kind of the meme that's been circulating for like 3 years now, ever since the 2022 plunge. Crypto kind of goes the same way as the economy, and
yeah.
people are starting to believe that that's just the norm now. I personally don't. I think there's still going to be several instances in the upcoming future where crypto goes its own direction, and it's usually led by Bitcoin. Um,
Mhm.
Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but most, if not all, of Bitcoin's historic bull runs have occurred when there's been zero reliance on the S&P 500 and it goes its own way. So it doesn't go the opposite way. It just goes its own way and doesn't care what the economy is doing. So many are kind of waiting around for that moment to happen. And it could happen, especially under Trump's regime here, where he's quite pro crypto, and has been vocal about that.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. And gold's been on a rip, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, gold is historically, as you know, just uh, a signal for traders that are afraid of the apocalypse, are afraid of war, have uncertainty about a recession or a depression being around the corner. And obviously, due to the tariffs, you can see pretty precisely, actually, going back um, to about the 7th. I believe this was when there was clarity with China. This was when like they really started to ramp it up, and the US announced higher tariffs for China, and China announced higher for the US. And we realized there wasn't going to be a quick resolution. So gold started to rise, um, and it just took off over the next uh, 6 or 7 business days. It's been now jumping a total of about almost 10% now. But to be fair, Bitcoin and the S&P are both up during that time as well, um, partly due to time passing and people starting to, bake in the news to their normal trading strategies, and partly
Mhm.
due to, um, just buying the dip. Because if we go back to what happened at the beginning of the month, it was pretty brutal. So some people say, okay, even with tariffs, this was pretty undervalued, and we're going to start buying up some of the major dips that occurred at the beginning of the month.
Mhm. Yep. Well, that's showing there on the graph. I guess Bitcoin being digital gold, it's moving in a similar direction as the graphs are showing.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, Andy, because the question is why? Why do people refer to it as digital gold? Well, it's the decentralized version of currency. Um, it's the hedge against global economies, in theory, where you should be able to hold for your own this online
Digital asset.
currency that has real value. Exactly.
Yep.
And no matter what happens to our economy, even if capitalism ceases to exist, crypto
Yep.
should be here to stay. So
Yep.
people refer to it fondly as digital gold, even though we don't quite see the effect of it the way real gold is showing just yet. Um,
Yep.
Maybe that's
Yep.
something that's still a decade or two away, but many believe we'll
I
eventually get there.
I agree. I think the as the acceptance of Bitcoin spreads throughout the population, the global population. Yeah, you'll probably see, as you say, we could be a decade away.
Mhm.
Then you'll see, um, if Bitcoin continues to act or acts as digital gold, then that's that flight to safety, possibly, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I speak to people older than you and I, more in like the boomer generation, as the US likes to refer to us, maybe
Yep.
the 60-plus-year-olds, um, they they certainly accept that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is a thing and a thing to stay. Um, talking to even my own parents and friends' parents back in 2017 when I was first getting into crypto, it was more of like how could anyone believe in that? How could it possibly be worth anything more than $0? Everyone is getting scammed. I would never touch it with a 10-foot pole. Well, now we have institutionals and
Yeah.
real banks investing in
Yep.
crypto, and the president of the United States having a public crypto wallet. So times have certainly changed. Um,
Yep.
it's just like anything, a slower process than you think. HDTV didn't happen right away.
Yep.
Um, Analog to digital didn't happen right away. It's the way of the world. We need to take time and understand that
Yep.
the theories that we think crypto will eventually grab a hold of are not going to happen overnight.
No, I fully agree. In fact, this reminds me of a presentation that I watched from Tom Lee, where he mentioned that every generation goes through specific experiences that would shape their view of the world. So, as each generation goes, I mean, I'll give an example. My late grandmother, she lived through the war, and she lived through different currencies because in Malaysia we were colonized by the British, and then the Japanese came, and so there was uh, the currency switched from what the British were using to what the Japanese printed. So eventually, that asset, that safety asset, went back to gold, and that's why her generation valued gold that much. Um, I guess we live in a different era. We're in a very digital era today. There are many people born to become digital natives. Like they don't know what life was like before Wi-Fi, right? We kind of lived through that and adopted Wi-Fi. So I think as the world becomes more digital, digital natives, it's a natural progression for digital natives to hold on to digital assets.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Any countries where there has been a little more strife or distrust in the government, uh, those were the same people who grasped onto gold 50 to 100 years ago and
Mhm.
are trying to embrace cryptocurrency at an increased rate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's a
absolutely.
great story. Thanks for sharing, Andy.
Yeah, no worries.
One thing I should also mention is the trading returns. We've talked about MVRV plenty on this show, and as of now, we're seeing neither an overvaluation or undervaluation based on raw trading returns from the crowd right now. It's about as dead even as you can get from both a short-term and long-term basis. So 30-day average returns plus 1% on average for anyone that's been active in the past 30 days. That's their return. For 365-day traders, they're down minus 0.7%, which is
Wow.
pretty much as good as 0% as we're going to get. So you can see compared to where we were in November, we had 45, 48% returns on average. And it finally actually crawled into the negatives in March and then even more in the negative um, on that big dip about a week ago. And now
Mhm.
we're right back to even based on a quick dip buy and rebound from crypto, which um, a lot of people thought was kind of a dead cat bounce, but it's shown some resilience through all the chaos.
Yeah, that's interesting. What's Ethereum looking like?
Great
Oh,
question. So if we go over to Ethereum, which has notoriously been pretty undervalued, I actually
yeah,
put a post out today. I should show that to kick things off.
yeah.
Ethereum's network costs hit a milestone today. Their fees on their network on average are at just 16.8 cents. That's a far
Wow.
cry from being up at over $15. What was it? I think in late 2024, before the time constraints on this graph. It's actually the lowest day today since May 2nd, 2020, excuse me. That's a pretty
Wow.
big milestone, and it shows just how little demand the network has right now. And the reason this matters is generally when you see fees get this low, like under a quarter per transfer, there's been a bit of a rally because the supply demand of the fees kind of uh, dictates how many users start to flock back to the network. And when it's so cheap and the bidding for low fees is so scarce, people start being attracted to using Ethereum and its network again due to its cheapness and its trustability.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because like I think 2 days ago or a couple of days ago, I did a transfer and I think the estimated cost was something like 4 cents. It
Mhm.
was it was really low. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know there's altcoiners out there that are screaming at their screens saying my altcoin is even cheaper and faster. I believe it. I know there are objectively almost free coins out there that can be transferred. But the key, it isn't my argument to make, but the key and the reason people keep flocking back to Ethereum is it's established, it's trusted, it's the number two market cap. Your altcoin is not the number two market cap. Maybe it will be someday. But right now, despite nearly 3 years of underperformance, Ethereum
Mhm.
is still something like 30% ahead of the next largest market cap, which is Tether. And after that is XRP, and after that, Solana. So, um, Ethereum, even with technology advancing and some objectively having more efficient ways to transfer, Ethereum will always be a thing, at least in the near future. And I would anticipate that there will be some brief rally, at least, to start to get the pot stirring again and finally get some people to pay attention to the number two market cap again.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I guess there must be extremely low usage of DeFi
Yeah.
apps and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're seeing pretty pretty unimpressive transaction volume, active addresses, circulation, network growth. They're kind of moving down. Network growth looks okay, but active address circulation, not so much. Um, Unlike Bitcoin, where we just saw that it was even, look at
Mm.
Ethereum. The average returns for traders in the past 30 days sits at about negative 11.7%. In the last 365 days, about negative 43.9. These are massively low,
Yeah.
and implies that the coin is a bit undervalued due to the fact that the zero sum game is far below zero right now. The average traders are in a ton of pain. It doesn't mean we're guaranteed to see a huge bounce to get this back to zero, but it definitely increases the probability. And if we go back in time to other instances, let's just go back 2 years. Let's see if we can get it to load right away. I'll make the intervals a little bit better. There we go. Yeah, so like when we saw the huge dip in early August, for example, this was the
Mhm.
perfect time to buy when the MVRVs got low. This was also a great time to buy August 2023. Um,
Yep.
Generally, anytime both the orange and the blue,
Yep.
representing the short and long term MVRVs, are both well in the negative, these are the times that you can buy at a relatively risk free moment in time. And we're at that moment once again. Obviously, nothing in crypto is a guarantee. Anything
Yep.
can go wrong for even the largest assets, like we recently saw with Mantra, that dropped 90% of its market cap. But, this trading is a probability game. And this is one of the more risk free dip buys you can buy based on just the raw math.
Yep. Yeah. Should we Actually, interesting that you mentioned Mantra. Should we have a quick look at Mantra just to see what
Course.
happened?
I was going to suggest that. So we did put
Cool.
a full inside out in collaboration with Bybit. I won't
Mhm.
show it on this screen because I want it to release on Bybit first, but we
Sure.
really discuss in detail what's
Mhm.
going on with Mantra right now and all of the distrust going on. I won't get into the politics or the speculation. People are obviously very angry, especially those who had significant investments in it. But here's the
Yeah.
drop that caused
Ooh,
headlines.
dang. Wow.
$6.28 down to, I mean, these are just zoomed out prices, 45 cents. I know it got a little even below that, but just highlighting this slim period of time is about a 93% drop. It's recovered slightly for those who have had the uh, cojones to buy the dip right here at the bottom. You would be up about 56% on your investment now. But we saw the same effect with FTT after it collapsed and Luna. There are still people willing to take a chance and try to invest again, but this will be a
Mhm.
tough one to recover from. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mantra is just never a top 50 market cap asset again.
Wow. That chart looks brutal.
Yeah. And there are some fair upsides to this too. Like we have seen uh supply and exchanges, for example, and whale transact. I mean, that was a really interesting thing when we saw the whale transaction count spike as the price dropped. Um, but
Mhm.
I also wanted to show supply on exchanges down here, and it's actually been pretty stable. So it wasn't like there was just a huge move of coins to exchanges. There certainly was afterwards, but if I
Mm.
zoom in a little bit, all of these inflows were just kind of a reaction. These brown spikes were a
Yeah.
reaction to the price drop. It didn't happen beforehand.
Yeah.
Um, and then supply and exchanges has started to move up a little, but there's still only about 76% on exchanges, and it was 71 before. And
Mhm.
it stayed at 71 for about a day until people finally decided to, you know, offload their coins for those who are doing so. And then from like a whale standpoint, I was also checking just the overall supply held by different tiers. And as we get larger and larger, this is where we see some weirdness. So the 1 million to 10 mil 1 million to 100 million mantra tier. I'll just isolate these for a moment. And I'll put the price on. So we only have daily scales for the supplies, but you can clearly see that they offloaded roughly 12% of the entire supply of mantra on the day that it dropped. You see it show afterwards, but that's only because that was when the day's market closed and when we got new updated data. But the moral of the story is this is the tier that just got crumbled. It was people that were holding at the time 6 million to $600 million worth of mantra, and they just offloaded like crazy. I know Look on Chain did some analysis and found some interesting entities that likely were associated with these wallets.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big story, and there are better resources out there that can really get into the details of it. But from a
Mhm.
data perspective, yeah, I mean the massive whales were definitely responsible for this crash. Now, who those whales are, there are better resources out there than us to find out. But I
Yep.
found it pretty fascinating.
That's interesting here because in traditional markets, in the stock market, there are things called limit downs and limit ups. So
Mhm.
within a trading day, if a stock goes down or up by a certain percentage, then the stock exchange would
Freeze.
freeze
Yeah.
it, and therefore it gets kind of I guess it's a circuit breaker in a sense where there are pros and cons and arguments for both sides. But yeah, it's interesting. Like you in crypto, you see almost a truly free market where there are no no one's gonna step in to stop the damage or stop it from going sky high.
Yep.
Similarly, on the flip side, you have one where it's I guess regulated or controlled or managed. So yeah,
Yeah,
take
for
with
better
it
or worse.
what. Yeah, I mean there are pros and cons to both. Yeah.
That's the double-edged sword of crypto is you've got no one that is going to stand in your way and also no one who's going to come and save you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if anything, go in with your eyes wide open and know what you're getting into.
That's great advice.
Yeah, yeah. Looks like we're almost time, aren't we, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I'll conclude with just pointing out the overall sentiment to the markets right now. If we go to the ratio of positive versus negative commentary across social media, it actually was
Mhm.
showing quite high until Jerome Powell spoke today, and he said that there would not be rate cuts, and many were hoping for them. There still might be in the distant future or very, very soon future, but for now, as soon as he stated that there would not be rate cuts and the economy is still stable enough, despite the uncertainty of tariffs, that
Mhm.
kind of pushed markets down once again. And we immediately saw prices start to, here is where it happened. So he spoke right about here. I can
Mhm.
make this a little more detailed, put it at an hourly sentiment. And you can see how right after he spoke, the sentiment started to tank. This is when he began his speech. And then it became more and more negative. These gold bars indicate the
Mhm.
ratio of positive versus negative. This is the break even line. In fact, right about, I put on the axis right about here. So anything below that, that means there's actually more negative comments toward Bitcoin now than positive. And this hour, as we speak, it's at one of its most negative points that we've seen in of the year, to be honest. So
Wow.
it's quite significant what that one speech did to crypto, but it actually could
Yep.
have a positive effect because, as we know, prices move the opposite direction of the crowd's expectations.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So hang
Thanks for
tight,
that
guys.
little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks for that insight. It's interesting to know. And yeah, and I guess a message to all of you who are listening in. I guess stay safe. There are forces beyond our control. Hang tight. Stay safe. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I think the the whole world economy right now is there's extreme uncertainty. So I think uh, if you're affected, I wish that you come out. I hope that you come out of this unscathed. And if you're not, then good. Maybe help a brother out. If there's anyone who's in affected, reach out, see how they're doing, see if you can help. Yeah. All
Great stuff,
right.
Andy. Well said.
Yeah. No. So any parting comments, Brian?
Um, I think we are in a very news dependent state in the markets right now. It's certainly not um, just bulls and bears carving their own path. We're very much reliant on some tariff certainty coming out soon. And any bad news tends to push prices down very quickly. good news does the opposite, and we're kind of at the whim of government decisions at the moment, which is something crypto traders probably never expected to be in, but here we are. And I don't think this is a forever thing, but it certainly is a more uncertain time where fundamentals have a bit of an asterisk to them until we finally get some clarity and understanding about where the world's headed.
Absolutely. Great. Great comment there. Okay, I think look, guys, thanks for tuning in. We're looking forward to doing this again next month, and stay safe out there. And Brian, thanks for your time, for sharing.
Thank you, Andy. Always a pleasure.
All right, have a great one, guys, and you Brian, take care.
Bye bye.